Hi boys and girls. Today we're going to talk about another type of a graph, and we're going to talk about a histogram. Okay, and so here is a histogram, and as you look at it, it might remind you of a different type of graph that you previously talked about, and that is a bar graph. Okay, so here's a bar graph. So I want you to look at the bar graph and then look back at the histogram again and see if you can think to yourself, what is the difference? Okay, there's only one thing that's different about a bar graph and a histogram, and that is on a bar graph we have these gaps. The bars on a bar graph do not touch, whereas in a histogram they do. And the reason they do is we use a histogram when we have a data set that has a lot of information in it. So for example, in this example, we're talking about the ages of people, and the ages go from 20 clear up here to 69. If you were going to try and do that in a bar graph, you would have just a ton of bars. Okay? So when we just have a small piece of information here, like for example, this bar graph is only including 5 different things, then you can use a bar graph. But when you have a wide variety of data, then we have to use a histogram. And we can still show all that information, but we use intervals like we talked about when we were doing frequency tables. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to read a histogram, and then we're also going to talk about how to create one. Okay, so if you want to grab your book and follow along, I think that's a great idea. Okay, so our first problem today says, the histogram shows the ages of winners of the Academy Award for Best Actor from 1990 to 2009. How many winners were under 40 years old? Okay, so as we look at our histogram, boys and girls, this tells us, the bottom tells us the age of the people, right? And then the side tells us the frequency, how often that event occurred. Okay, remember our question was asking how many winners were under 40 years old. Okay, so I'm just going to go right through our questions right here. It says the height of each bar shows how many data values are in the interval the bar represents, and then it asks how many winners were 20 to 29 years old. So if we look at that interval, boys and girls, we can see that there was only one. Okay, and then it says, which other bar represents people under 40? Okay, so this would include people under 40. This includes people under 40. This does not include people under 40 because it's from 40 to 49. So we're talking about how many people were this way. So right here we had one person. Okay, that next interval we had 6 people. Okay, so people, so the other bar had people under 40, that was 6 people. So from 30 to 39 years old was 6. And so then when we add those two intervals together, that would be 7. So all together, there were 7 winners under the age of 40. So for our next example, boys and girls, I skipped the example in the book because it was already partially done, and I wanted to show you how to do one from scratch. So I skipped the example and I went straight to our share and show. So if you're following along, that's where we're at. Okay, so here it says, for 1 through 4, use the data at the right. So we're going to be creating a histogram about ages of people at a health club. This is the data we're going to be using. Okay, before we can create our histogram, we need to figure out how many people fall into each of our intervals. And that table was already created here for us. If you needed to create your own, boys and girls, you would look at your table and you would ask yourself, what is the youngest person and what is the oldest person? Make sure and include the highest and the lowest data value, and then create the intervals from there. Okay, so here's our intervals: 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49. Remember, when you're creating intervals, you want to make sure and have the same amount of data set in each interval. Okay, so this is including 10 each time. Okay, the next thing we do is we're just going to record how often that happened. How frequent did each of those ages occur? Okay, so looking at that, 10 to 19, there's 1, 2, 2. 20 to 29 happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. 30 to 39 was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And then 40 to 49 was 2 times. Okay, so that's how often they occurred. And I'm going to go to my histogram now. Okay, a couple important things about a histogram if you're creating your own. Okay, we need to make sure and label, boys and girls, what it is that we're doing on each of the sides. Okay, so ages is going to be at the bottom, and then this is how often it occurred, the frequency. Okay, I'm going to take my intervals and then I'm going to add them to my graph. So 10 to 19 would be here, and then 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and 40 to 49. Okay, now 10 to 19, that's 2, so this bar is going to go to here. Okay. 20 to 29, there were 6. Remember, there's no gap because there's not a gap in our data. Where one leaves off, the other one starts. So that's going to go up to 6. Okay, and I'm going to mark it just a little bit different so you can tell it's a different interval. Okay, 30 to 39 would be 5. Do this one sideways. And then 40 to 49 is back to 2. And I'm just going to go back to what we started with. Okay, and that's how you create a histogram. Good luck.